All right, so while we prepare here the presentation through Zoom, so the title of the paper is KuaiRec, a fully observed data set and insights for evaluating recommender systems. Thanks.
Yes. So hello everyone. My name is Shijun Li. I'm a master's student at the University of Science and Technology of China. Today, I will introduce our work collaborating with KuaiRec Corporation, which is named a fully observed data and insights for evaluating recommender systems. So I will first introduce the motivation of work as well as the collection process and characters of our dataset. Then I'll briefly talk about the research questions we studied and what the experiments and results were derived. And last, I'll briefly make a conclusion and show some future works to do. So the motivation of our work comes from the challenges of evaluating the recommender systems. Generally, there are two ways of the evaluation. The most straightforward solution is to conduct online A/B tests, which resorts to the online environment to see if real users are satisfied with the recommendations made by the system. However, this is time and money consuming and entails the risk of a huge business loss. As a result, it's laborious and impractical for most academic researchers to do so. Therefore, in academia, it's necessary to evaluate recommender systems on the offline datasets. However, there is also a big problem that more existing datasets are only partially observed with a large number of missing user item interactions. That means we do not know the user's preference on the items that they have never seen or interacted before. Simply treating these missing values as negative samples will make the evaluation seriously unfeasible. Basically, there are two kinds of missing values in the datasets. If the data is missing not at random, various exposure biases will make the evaluation unfeasible. And to solve it, some previous researchers built two datasets which are missing at random. It has been proven that we can conduct unbiased evaluation on data which is missing at random. However, both of these datasets are highly sparse, which can bring a high variance to the evaluation results. Also, they lack some key information to support many latest research. For example, the Yahoo R3 does not contain any user features and item features, and Yahoo R6 lacks user IDs, and the code has only about 300 items, and the dimension of user and item feature is only 4 in it. So to fundamentally solve these challenges, we propose to collect a fully observed dataset on KuaiRec, which is one of the largest short video sharing apps in China with more than 300 million daily active users. Here, fully observed means that each user has seen more items in the dataset and given their feedback. That means we know users' preference on each item and are able to accurately simulate users' behaviors to conduct a faithful evaluation. The fully observed data can also serve as a benchmark dataset for wild field research directions in recommendation, such as reinforcement learning, debiasing, and interactive learning, because it precisely characterizes the whole environment in the recommender systems. What's more, this data also contains rich site information, including more user and item IDs, as well as rich user and item features. As for the collection process, we insert the unseen items into the recommendation feed for each user to collect the data. In this process, we'll make sure that each user has seen all the items and given their feedback, such as watch time and click rate on each item. The following is the statistic of our dataset. Basically, there are two metrics. The small matrix is the fully observed one with thousands of users and items, which can be used for trustworthy evaluation. And the big matrix is the partially observed data, with more users and items, researchers can train their models on this matrix. It's worth to note that the density of the small matrix is 99.6% instead of 100%, because some users have actively blocked the videos from certain orders. This means the users have expressed strong negative attitude towards all the videos published by these orders. As a result, we can safely make the judgment that all the users dislike these videos. Based on this data, we can further study the evaluation results on partially observed datasets with different characters. Specifically, we studied two key factors in partially observed data, including the data density and the exposure biases. The data density means the ratio of the items exposed to the users. So in the experiments, we will vary these two factors to see their effect on the evaluation results of several recommender systems. So in the experiment part, I will first introduce the experiment scenario. We conduct all the experiments in this paper under the conversational recommendation scenario, which is a relatively new and promising research direction in the study of recommender systems. We choose this setting as our experiment scenario because it's a multi-round interaction process, which is much more realistic than the traditional one-step recommendation. So this figure shows the role of CRAs. There are two traditional methods for user to get an item, including search and recommendation. For most search algorithms, they assume that the user's intention is totally clear. The search engine aims to accurately retrieve the items according to the user's instruction. On the other side, in most recommender systems, user's intention is obscure and unclear. The recommendation system needs to estimate the user's preference and intention. So conversational recommendation can be a bridge here to connecting search and recommendation. By directly asking questions to the users, CRAs tries to explicitly acquire users' preference and intention, achieving more efficient and accurate recommendation. So in this way, users can also actively tell the system what they want and what they like by means of a conversation. So in the experiments, we synthesized a series of partially observed datasets by sampling from the fully observed one and evaluate several CRS models on each dataset. These sampling strategies are designed to synthesize different biases existing in normal datasets. The sampling strategies include the uniformness random sampling, the positivity-oriented sampling, and the popularity-oriented sampling. We also vary the sampling ratios from 10% to 90%, synthesizing datasets with different density. So this is the experiment results. Typically, we conduct our experiments under two settings in conversational recommendation. The first is the single target ground truth setting, which means the user will only accept a single ground truth item in each conversation. The left figure shows the performance of 8 CRS models on these partially observed datasets with different exposure ratios and exposure biases. In this setting, the ranking of all compared models keeps unchanged if the dataset was uniformly sampled from the fully observed one. This is in line with the conclusion of the missing and random theory. However, if we introduce biases into the data for evaluation by positivity sampling or popularity sampling, some methods which are sensitive to these biases will have distinctively different performance and rankings on datasets with different exposure ratios. The second setting is the multi-target ground truth setting, which means the user will accept multiple ground truth items in each conversation. We argue that this is a much more realistic setting in conversation recognition scenario. Things are quite different under this setting. The rankings of several CRAs vary a lot, even with uniformly random sampling. As for the effect of biases, we can see that both the positivity bias and the popularity bias will aggravate the discordance of the rankings of series and make the evaluation results less faithful. We further studied the effect of estimating the missing values, which means completing the partially observed data into an imitative fully observed one. This figure illustrates the performance of the matrix computation on the partially observed data. The training set is partially observed data and the test set is the unobserved one. We use 3 classic methods to estimating the missing values, and the results show that the models with the ability of debouncing performs better than the others. Based on these results, we further evaluate 4 compared CRS models on each partially observed dataset after estimating the missing values. The left figure shows the results. Generally, after estimating the missing data, the number of inconsistent rankings on the uniformly random sample data becomes smaller. However, in our experiments, matrix completion only helped to identify the true evaluation rankings in certain cases. If the biases exist in the partially observed data, completing the missing values can bring additional errors and make the evaluation even less faithful. This result further demonstrates the necessity of our fully observed dataset for evaluating recommender systems. So this part is a brief conclusion of our research. We firstly collect the fully observed data on the short video sharing platform KuaiRec, which supports trustworthy evaluation of recommender systems. And based on this data, we conduct extensive experiments to study the effect of data on the evaluation of recommender systems. The results show biases and different density of the partially observed data can greatly affect the evaluation results. Also, we found out that estimating the missing values to complete the matrix can only restore the true rankings in certain cases in our experiments. The last is a discussion about the future works. First, the fully observed data can support a wide field of research, such as biasing, interactive learning, reinforcement learning, and etc. Because this data precisely can characterize the whole environment in the recommender systems by recording what users' preference on each item. And second, although our experiments demonstrate limited help of completing the missing values to simulate the fully observed data, it's still interesting and meaningful to explore whether it is possible to achieve faithful evaluation on partially observed data. Our fully observed dataset can be a ground truth benchmark for the future research in this direction. So that's all of my presentation. Thanks. And is there any questions?
Is there any question from the audience? Yeah. Anyone? No? So I was actually curious about the how do you simulate the missing value by using simulation? So that part is can you tell a little bit more about that part?
You mean this part?
Yeah.
Yes. So for each partially observed data we sampled from the fully observed one, we will use this partially observed data as the training set and predict the unobserved user item interactions by these models, including the PNF, the ExpoNF, and ExpoNF with COF. So these models are trained on the partially observed data, and in the reference stage, they predict the missing values based on the knowledge they learned from the existing observed user item interactions.
All right, thank you very much. Any?
Yes, thank you.